more presidential politics, more on abortion, the Cohen hearings, and North Korea. Welcome, everybody. This is Matt Field, and this is Ditch Your Political Party podcast. There is plenty to review. As far as quantity goes, there isn't tons of quantity, but there's a lot of depth that has been that we can go into with the different things that have happened this week. There were a lot of hopes for a lot of things that they would happen, but they did not. And of course, politics are a never-ending web of garbage. So we will discuss that garbage. But first, I want to go over something that I think is very important, and I think it's the first step for us to begin to actually overcome some of the insanity in the nation. And that's by getting on board with the Convention of States. So the Convention of States is essentially giving the ability to the people to make amendments. I know people have problems with the checks and balances, but it has to be 38 states. You still have to have the 2/3 states in order to make this happen. So there isn't really any massive worry as to whether or not there'll be a running away of states. But this is the part that I love about this, is something that I've discussed many times with many people. And that is that the majority of the time, you can't get anything done in Washington of real value. But you can get a bunch of garbage done in Washington because it sustains the people that are there, and it sustains their ability to drain resources and to maintain power. When you have a Convention of States and you're able to pass an amendment through the people, through the states, to limit the terms of your congressman and your Senate members, then you have the ability to drain the swamp, as was so popularly used in the 2016 election. We do need to drain the swamp, and that's the first step, in my opinion. We begin there, and in that, though, in that entire bill, or that amendment that is passed, there is a reform of campaign laws as far as the financing goes, which would limit the ability for people to have massive influence over candidates. And this is something that has to totally be avoided, because you don't want to put a candidate into office that is going to bend at every single thing that is asked by one of their donors. So in the past, they've had they still have them, the super PACs, right? Super PACs are essentially legally laundering money, and it can be used for basically anything they want. So that's something that would have to get off the table, because we don't know who essentially is donating to these super PACs. We don't know how it's working out exactly and who is involved. That is kept under wraps for the most part. But it's the same thing with massive donations. I think that if we're to have a equal, strong campaign from each of these individuals, they have to limit themselves to their ability to on the resources they're able to use. And so Daddy can't come in and give you $1 billion to make sure that your campaign goes smoothly. I think it needs to come from, Bernie has got it going on when it comes to the donations. The majority of his donations, we talked about this last week, is that he was able to get a bunch of small donations, and he made $6 million. So the average donation, I think, was $27 or $30 or something like that. When you can have that sort of ground roots concept, then it's a lot more convincing, in my opinion, and it allows a lot more people to run that don't have massive resources. And I think that that's a good place to begin too, to limit all this money that's going into it. At very minimum, eliminate super PACs, right? So that we don't have to deal with it, legally laundered money from politicians that they can use at any time to push any agenda anywhere, right? So, Convention of States. If you haven't heard of it, go check it out. Conventionsofstates.com. They're not actually a sponsor of ours, but I'm just so pumped up about them that I want them to succeed. Right now, I think there's 3.8 million people that have signed this petition, this action, and so we're in the process of. I think if people are willing to go there, we can make a big difference. So let's jump into some of the some of the politics that have happened over, I just want to make this mention real quick. Again, going back to AOC. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who a lot of you already know, and some of you, they might actually be your rep. She might be your rep. She has done a lot of stupid things since she has been in office, and she continues to do as such. She, now, I don't believe that she is, but her actions prove otherwise. So we have her, who is, she's getting upset that people are calling her out about the Green New Deal. And originally, the Republicans said, McConnell came out and said, well, if you guys all like the Green New Deal so much, why don't we put it on the table and let's get it voted on? And, of course, Chuck Schumer came back this week and said, well, you can't say anything until you offer another solution. But he's not going to bring it up, He's just pandering to politics. He can't say that it's a dumb idea, otherwise he's going to ostracize those that are far on the left. And he can't say that it's a dumb idea, because then he's essentially supporting the other side of the aisle. So he finds himself in a political tug-of-war that there's no way he can win, because the deal that has been put on the table is just complete garbage. And we've discussed it before many times, and it doesn't have any inkling of logic that is behind it. People say on the left, if you have to ask what it costs, then you aren't understanding the urgency of it. Okay, apparently the world is going to end in 10 years, and we have to. But on an unrelated, it's not related, an unrelated note, but based on the bill, so we're worried about climate change, Green New Deal, worried about climate change, and then we need to make sure everybody's employed. And then, but even if you don't want to be employed, we'll still get you money. And then we need to get rid of all cars and airplanes, and we're going to replace them with trains. So, if you just begin to start thinking about the demand of the amount of trains that would have to take place, just the trains. Okay, I think the train that was proposed in California was, billions and billions and billions of dollars. If you were to create that kind of infrastructure for all of the United States over a period of 10 years, you're talking trillions and trillions of dollars. Not to mention giving everyone a job, and even if you don't want to work, you can get money. You still get paid. So, essentially she's describing what was proposed by the Soviets. Of course, the Soviets, you had to work. And you got paid very little. So, so she's upset that people are calling her out, and she's saying that, hey, you can stop saying something until, I'm the boss, so you can stop saying anything at all. You can stop saying anything until you have something to offer. And, the Republicans aren't going to bring forth any climate change bill. And personally, I don't believe that they should. Okay, I believe that there's some global warming that's taking place, but I don't think it's anything out of the ordinary from what has happened in the past. If you look at the projections, all the models that they have run in the past, back in the 90s when they were talking about global warming up till now, we should already be underwater, right? Well, not me in Utah. We're good to go. But those on the coast have already been underwater, and they haven't been. They're fine. And even the scientists that are behind all of this have said, this global warming concept is just going to be a small, slow process from year to year, an increase of a half an inch, or something like that. It's totally avoidable when it comes to the people that are around. So I'm confused as to why this is why there's so much urgency behind this. Bernie's on the same boat. He wants to get rid of, he wants to try and eliminate global warming. The weird thing is it doesn't matter how much we decrease. It doesn't matter how much the United States decreases. You still have all the other countries around us. And if you look at the Accord deals, the ones that we got criticized for pulling out of, every nation that was there essentially said that they would think about it. Really, that's all they said. In fact, I know that China, essentially, their the levels that they committed to were less than what they were at the time. So they can still increase in the amount of emissions that they're causing and still be in accord at the with what happened in Paris. So really silly politics. I do not think global warming is a serious issue right now. I don't think there's anything wrong with us exploring and trying to improve upon what is out there as far as energy goes, because fossil fuels are good for now, but I've always thought that solar power would always be the winner in the end. I don't know if that's the case, or maybe they'll find something else. I don't know. But I think we leave that to something like, if the government wants to be involved, I think at very most they offer an incentive to somebody that comes up with an efficient option that they could take and run with it. Right? They've done that all over. They've done that a lot, where they've said, make me a car that does over 100 miles an hour, or 100 miles an hour, 100 gallons, or 100 miles per gallon. There we go. And people have come up with things that did better than that. And then they won the money for that, and then they go pursue whatever it is they want to do. But now the technology exists, and people can get on board, and they can do something with it. So now I don't think the government should be involved in the process outside something like that. If they really want something to change, then they give the incentive to the private sector to come up with it, because they'll run it better and faster and everything. Because as soon as you get the government involved, everything goes slower, it goes worse, it goes less efficient, everything is worse once it heads to the federal government. USPS, if it were an investor, if it was run by investors, they would have gone out of business years ago, because they have never I don't even think they've made a profit ever, as far as I know. I'd have to look that one up, but they have not made a profit for a very, very long time. So anyway, we're going on. She's all upset. She's saying all the Republicans are probably going. This is one of the crazy things. And this is where I just think, AOC, if you really want to be a big politician, then you really need to think about what's coming out of your mouth. Because she says all Republicans will probably be dead by the time climate change comes around. So all the Republicans. So she knows that there's a lot of Republicans that are young too. And maybe she's just referring to the Republican leaders. And if she's referring to the Republican leaders, the average age of all the Democrats is actually higher than that of the Republicans. So kind of a weird statement. She kind of just lets everything fly out of her mouth. And it's not very effective. Again, it comes back to the logic. Why was she elected? Why was she elected, and what has she done in the past to prove herself? She hasn't done anything. She was a bartender, and she's been caught up in some finance issues with campaign finance laws. She essentially she's just been a human being that's been on the earth, and for some reason had the ambition to run for Congress. And now that she's there, she hasn't really done anything outside just propose some crazy ideas. I don't know. If you're going to elect somebody, you have to look at it logically. Again, I'm not for any party. I'm not for any party. I do not care. I will vote for a Democrat if they make sense. I will vote for a independent if they make sense. I will vote for a Republican if they make sense. But all it comes down to is whether or not they make sense. Now, ideologically, when it comes to, at the end of the day, I lean more towards fiscal responsibility, because that's what's going to destroy you in any business. If you're stupid with your money, you will go out of business. And the government, if they were a business, they would have gone out of business a long time ago. And it's the same. Whenever I look at an organization, and if that's the case, then I don't really support it all that much and the decisions they're making. And so I'm always leaning towards the fiscal responsibility. So, but there are a few that are fiscally responsible in Congress at all. And it's kind of sad, because at some day it's going to hit the fan, and we're going to have to deal with it. Anyway, enough about AOC. I've ranted long enough. So now we're going to move on to, I'm going to hit up these two spots right here, North Korea and Cohen, Mr. Cohen, the private attorney for Trump. He hasn't really, nothing really happened during his hearings, right? He went before publicly, and he just basically regurgitated a bunch of information, a lot of she said, he said type stuff that has nothing to do, has no information, has nothing, no bearing on the law, has And again, they're basing it on whether or not he colluded with Russia. Again, collusion is not a crime. It's not good, but it's not a crime. And, if you want to look at what Trump has done morally, then he is a terrible individual, right? He doesn't care about, he's not loyal to his wives that he's had. He's not loyal to really anything. He's all about the money, right? Money and power. That's what he's going for. And so the Cohen hearings essentially just gave each side what they wanted. He said that Mr. Trump didn't instruct me to lie to Congress, which is what the Republicans needed. He said that, and then he said a bunch of all the rest of the hearsay about him being a skis, and that's what gave the Democrats what they wanted. And a few other things that maybe, he said that, did they conclude with Russia? No, but Cohen says I had my suspicions. Again, that's not proof. The Democrats are trying to impeach Trump. The Republicans don't want him gone, obviously, because he's a Republican, quote unquote. And, essentially it's a big nothing burger. Trump, yeah, he's a great big jerk. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. I think everyone agrees that he's morally skewed. But has he done anything illegal? No. No, he hasn't done anything illegal. So, and I think that's where, and this actually plays to the whole idea of what is legal is okay and what is illegal is not okay. And often when you look at this, a lot of the arguments being made is that since it was immoral, quote unquote, it was also illegal. But that's not what law is. Law is what we create, is what we lay out, it's what we say, right? You can go be a jerk to someone in public. It doesn't matter. It matters. It matters in the moral sense, but it doesn't matter in the legal sense. You can be like, hey, you're really stupid, whatever. You can say a bunch of things like that and you're not going to get in trouble. You can talk about other people behind their back. You're not going to get in any legal trouble. Okay, but again, it kind of comes back to what is legal and what is illegal, and what is moral and what isn't moral. And we can't use that as a basis. We can't use the law as a basis of what is good or bad. Basically, the law comes well behind what morality is. And the law is there basically to say, once you hit this point, then we're going to do something about it, right? Once you come and break into my house, you can call me whatever you want. You can send me nasty letters, and maybe it gets to the point where you get a restraining order or whatever. But by the point they decide to break in, when they decide to break in your house, that's when it's like, okay, now you're going to jail, or you're going to get shot. Because you get in someone's house and they've got a gun, you're gone. So, anyway, it's the whole Cohen hearing just kind of brought that out a little bit more as to, what's legal, what's illegal, what's a suspicion, what's moral, and all this jazz. Basically, all of this is nothing legally speaking. Morally speaking, it's terrible. And Trump, in my opinion, though he's done some good things and he's actually governed fairly well in regards to different aspects of his presidency, he hasn't done well fiscally, which is my biggest thing, so I don't like him. And I don't really like him for a lot of reasons, but I like what he has done in some other areas. So he's one of those guys that's you don't want to stick with him. So if there is a good option for this coming election, I will be on board to try and oust Trump. But the way it's looking right now, I don't think there's going to be anybody that's going to beat him out, unless Howard Schultz or Joe Biden end up being more moderate than they are. I don't know. There's still a lot to see. We're only in 2019, right? We have all the way till 2020 before anything happens. So anyway, on to North Korea real quick. North Korea was a bust, and I don't think it was all that successful to begin with. I think it was blown out of proportion when he went the first time. They said that they were going to put on some different, Kim Jong-un was going to put on some different restrictions onto his nuclear weapons, all these sort of things. And, of course, they did open conversation. I think it's always good to have conversation. But essentially it was just a big photo op. I don't think anything was accomplished or ever will be accomplished. Kim is going to be Kim, right? And he's not going to change. The man has murdered family. He has murdered many of his citizens. He's about as bad as they get. If he gets rid of those nuclear weapons, he no longer has leverage, and people will come in and take him down, right? So there's no way he's going to get rid of them. So Trump believing that he can cause this to happen is stupid. I think Kim wanted to lift sanctions, and Trump did walk away from the table, thankfully. And honestly, if you ask me, you just put more and more sanctions onto him. I mean, that's really the only thing you can do until he begins to act as he should. You know, Kim Jong-un is, when you are a dictator like that, and you have gone well beyond what is morally and legally acceptable in really any part of the world, you don't get any latitude, in my opinion. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with having open conversation, but I do not think that there should be cameras all over the place. Now, if I were Trump and I was really trying to capitalize on something like this, there would be a long, long list of things that I would go over for him and said, you have to do this, or if you do not follow any of these, then we will not lift sanctions. And if he doesn't do it, then we would just put on more sanctions, right? So that essentially would be the best thing to do, in my opinion, but it would be a closed negotiation. It wouldn't be blown out of proportion like it was. Now, Trump is a guy who likes the attention, he likes the spotlight, and unfortunate for him, the more and more he's in the spotlight, the worse and worse he looks. But for some reason, his followers, whatever you want to call them, those that support him love him, right? They love it when he gives the 1-2 to the media. They love it when he gives the 1-2 to whoever else, and they've got a Trump angel, right, sitting on their shoulder. And whenever Trump does something stupid, or he does something that is completely illogical, they still support him. Which is why, again, the whole purpose of this podcast is to ditch your political party, kick off those little shoulder angels, shoulder devils, that's what I decided to call them last time. Kick off your shoulder devil and start listening to your own logic, right? Is Trump a good guy? No, he's not a good guy. So if he does stupid stuff, you don't have to support him when he does stupid stuff. All right? When he doesn't fulfill his promises, you don't have to support him in those different things. You don't need to back him up. And that's the part that I don't understand. Politicians aren't like, I don't know, they're not like it's not like he's the center in your basketball team, and if he doesn't hold up his end of the bargain, that you have to go get the ball for him and back him up, right? Politics are more along the lines of politics, of business. You are a board member, and when that person is being stupid and they aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing as CEO, then you find a way to get him out and get someone else in there. Or you reprimand him severely or whatever. The problem with most people is they look at him as your favorite basketball fan, not as a CEO or a member of a board. If you're in a board and he's the CEO and he's not doing his job, then he will essentially lose that job or something else would happen, because you're not going to allow your company to be driven into the ground. But if you're a team, if you're rooting for him on a team, then people will die loving a particular team forever just because, I don't really understand it. But people just will die loving a particular team even though they've lost a million times, or a particular player even though that they have performed very poorly. Right? That's what Trump followers do. They're more interested in supporting Trump no matter what, whenever anything happens. And that's not good. That's the same thing, not just with Trump, but with a lot of people on the left, a lot of people anywhere on the right, a lot of people anywhere. I'm here I live in St. George, Utah, right? Here in Utah, we just elected Mitt Romney as our representative. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Mitt Romney. I don't think he has a very good track record when it comes to his politics. Now, as a businessman, he's done very well, which is a good plus for him. But then he was in office. When he was in office, he didn't do so sweet. And he's lost several times running for president. I don't know if he's going to try and run for president again. I don't know what his plan is. In any case, he's probably going to keep his head down up until 2024. Anyway, so Mitt Romney gets elected, and that's just the Utah way. I mean, he won every single time in Utah. As soon as he decided to run as senator, he won. So, and in fact, it was disgusting, in my opinion, when Orrin Hatch, who was our senator, said, he's like, I probably won't run again unless Mitt Romney wants to run. Then I'll let him take my spot. Almost like he's handing off the baton, you know? When you vote based on name recognition, it's really, really obnoxious. It's really dumb. Because anyone could be in there, you know? Someone who has zero experience whatsoever. But if their name is, if you recognize that name well enough, you're going to mark them off. I mean, that's the worst way to vote. And that's one of the ways we can destroy our country very effectively, is by voting for those we recognize the most. Not for those who are best suited for the job, right? That's the funny thing about about politics. People are so willing, so often, to bring on the person who presents the strongest front, who represents more, appears to represent more unity. It's like when Barack Obama brought on Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton hasn't done anything that's great ever in politics, ever. Like, she's terrible. But he brought him on because it's good optics, right? Whether or not she was going to perform well as Secretary of State didn't matter. What mattered was that people were going to be more excited about her, going to be all that jazz. But did she perform well? No. And it's the same reason when she went to run for president. She ended up being the person that was brought into the Democratic Party running against Trump. But did she do well in her past assignments? No, she didn't. But for some reason, the American people, they love the idea of someone like Hillary Clinton because she's climbed to the top, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But when she was at the top, she failed. But that's okay. She can keep going. And that shouldn't be the case with anybody. It doesn't matter how great you are as far as optics go. It should be based on whoever. I was a big supporter of, I was a big fan of Ben Carson. Not because he was a Republican. In fact, he wasn't a Republican until he registered as a Republican. But because he was logical. He was logical. He had a track record of being logical. He'd done very well. He wasn't a flamboyant individual who brought a huge crowd, and that's probably why he didn't even come close to winning. But I liked what he did. I liked what he stood for. He was one of those guys who was morally in line and he was legally in line, as opposed to Trump, who's completely morally out of line, and in fact, legally, he's dubious. So, again, those are optics. What they did in North Korea, just optics, no good, for nothing. So, before we jump on to presidential politics, and maybe a few other things I'll hit up, I just want to talk to you a little bit about your business. If you are a business owner and you have inventory of a product or component or ingredient, and you no longer need it, what do you do with it? Most of the time, people try and write it off. They'll try and get rid of it that way at the end of the year, but that's not really cash in your pocket. It doesn't do anything good for you. All it does is make you pay a little less taxes. But when you are able to liquidate said inventory, you are able to have cash in your pocket again to reinvest into your business and prevent you from maybe even shutting your doors. If you are battling with surplus or excess inventory, use Excess Supply List. They put the balance back in your favor. Excess Supply List is where you can list any excess inventory you have for free. Now, this isn't like listing, you've got an extra chair or something like that you need to get rid of. That's something you list on Craigslist. But if you've got pallets of chairs, then you list it, right? It's based on, this is where you buy quantity. And I suppose if you aren't necessarily a business and you want to go buy some quantity, go buy some quantity. So go to excesssupply.com, click on Publish and Add for free, and get it done. You literally have nothing to use. Again, it's free to post. It is free. It is free. So go to excesssupply.com, list your excess or surplus supply, and get the cash back in your pocket so you can reinvest. Excesssupply.com, excesssupply.com. So we're going back on to presidential politics. Joe Biden is essentially setting up to throw his hat in the ring. He's setting up his HQ, and it's pretty. I think it's pretty certain now that he's going to jump into the ring, but that remains to be seen. I assume that he'll do it within the next week or so, and when he does, we'll be all over it. Now, Joe Biden is one of those guys that he's actually one of those that would actually reach across the aisle. But how effectively, I don't know. The problem with the current political situation is someone like Joe Biden is going to hail the left because that's where he's going to get his votes. Now, how he's going to govern, I'm not sure. I have no idea. He's never been, he was with Barack Obama. He sort of just backed up Barack Obama. He's one of those guys that just kind of backs up the main player, right? Which isn't great, but I'm not entirely sure how he's going to act when he is president himself. So my guess, though, this is what I would think, is whoever is the hottest, or whoever is, trending, whatever the case may be, he's going to back them up, and that's what's going to help govern his policy, because he wants to remain strong in the eyes of the American people. And if he were president, that's how he would function. He wants to go full 2 terms. He wants to maintain, the Democratic. He wants to keep Democrats rolling, obviously. So he's going to adhere to whatever is asked of him. That's my thought, because he's a good old boy. So I don't think he'd be a good option right now. Well, not right now, not really ever, but the majority of the current candidates I'm not really excited about outside Howard Schultz. But he hasn't officially announced, and I don't know if he will. He has gotten a lot less media attention lately, and honestly, if he does announce, I would be surprised if he got any media attention, because how far the media is skewed. I doubt that they'll cover Howard Schultz all that much. And even the more conservative media, they usually just follow with whatever the liberal media is doing, or leftist media is doing, and so they cover the same things. They just try to diffuse it a little bit differently, or report it a little bit differently. So I don't know if he will be successful if he ran. I think he could be a good candidate. I don't know if he will be, or he would be. I would be interested to see if he does run. So real quick, Kamala Harris outside. So Joe Biden might run. Interesting. We'll see what happens. Kamala Harris comes out, and they're talking to her about her plan. She said that they want to do Medicare for all. And this, I just want to make mention of this, because this is the epitome and the full package when it comes to how politicians think. This isn't just Kamala Harris or the Democrats. It is basically every politician in Washington right now. They say, how are you going to afford Medicare for all? And she comes back, and this is the part that blows my mind. She's like, people shouldn't be looking so much about what it's going to cost. What they should be looking at is ROI. And she says that, ROI. I don't even know if she knows what that means, because that means return on investment. If she had any business inkling whatsoever, she would know that you are not going to get any return on your investment if you are throwing it into a public program. All that money is just going to go straight to whatever is needed in the Medicare realm. And if we do go to Medicare, there will be waiting lines, there will be prioritizations. You're not actually going to be able to go in right when you need the care. There will still be a private arm of that, unless they're able to overtake that private arm, because that's what's happened in every other nation. So if you just go to the north of us, up there in Canada, there is essentially the idea of Medicare for all. But you know what most people do? If they need care immediately, they go to a private practitioner, and they pay for it out of their pocket to get it taken care of. So if you're under the impression that Medicare for all, or some sort of health care program across the nation, is actually going to allow you to do what you think you need to do, then you're wrong. Because if you're a Medicare patient, or you're a Medicaid patient, or whatever the case may be, and you go in to a doctor's office, there's some doctors that won't accept it, because they don't get paid what they need to be paid, and it's not usually the same, and then it's the timing issue. So they don't accept Medicare, and they can't. And the idea, Bernie's suggesting that they have to accept you. If you think you have to be accepted, then you're not going to be in the Medicare. There aren't going to be near as many doctors, or all those sort of things just aren't going to happen. It just doesn't happen. So, but for you to privately function as a surgeon, or whatever, and not accept Medicare, you're probably still going to do very well, because people need surgeries very quickly. So a quick story real fast in regards to Medicare for all. There is no ROI just real quick. No ROI in this. Zero ROI. If you want to do something like this, you do what Sweden has done, I believe, and you pay into a private system so that you have money for you when you go. But the private system it's not run by the government. It's not doing anything like that. All you're doing is you're paying the money into a particular program. The problem with the United States is it's part socialized and it's part free market. It's not even close to what it's supposed to be. Now, the best example of this is, eye care. Eye care is something that has been totally run by the market for the most part. When it comes to laser eye surgery, it started out as like, 20 grand, right, to get your eyes fixed. But now it's like $2,000 an eye, or maybe even less, because there's been so many people going into it, and they can support it. Medicare doesn't cover anything like that because it's an elective surgery. Most, Medicare will cover glasses or something like that, but it's not going to cover a full revamp of your eye. And so all these private businesses have come in, and since it's elective surgery, they have to make it cheap. And it's the same thing that's happening with with other types of elective surgeries. And so that's the same sort of thing that could happen with the United States. It's the most logical thing that you could go for, but it's not going to happen because you have people like Kamala Harris believing that there's some sort of ROI that exists when you invest into it's not an investment, okay? It's just not an investment. So real quick though, back on the Medicare idea, Medicare for all concept. If you go, I was watching a program and there was a woman, and this is just a random woman that they picked off. This is actually a YouTube program I was watching. So it's not like it was ABC or something, right? They were just talking to people as they were going in. And they talked to someone they were in need of surgery for their leg. This is in Canada. They were in need of a surgery for their leg, and of course they could get it done for free, but there was like a 6-week waiting list. So they were like, okay, well, we can make that work. So 6 weeks go by, they go back in to get this thing done, and they couldn't accommodate them, so they had to wait another like 6 weeks or something. Anyway, it got to the point where by the time that person was able to get in there, they had a very fixable, very, very, very plausible for them to come out of this feeling 100% better. They ended up having to amputate the leg because they had to wait so long. So that really is your Medicare for all. It is, there's going to be rationing. There's going to so there's two aspects of it, right? So the first aspect is, hey, my Medicare is free, my health care is free, it's my right, blah blah blah. So I'm just going to go. I can go in whenever I want. So you're going to get a bunch of people. There's going to be basically tons of people going in to get care. And so even if they don't need that care, they're still going to be accommodated. So they go in to get checked out, and they have the sniffles. So that's gonna plug up your because most people now, if you have the sniffles, you stay home. You just figure it out, right? Because you don't want to pay for it. But if you don't have to pay for it, then you're going to go in. It's the same thing with anything else. If it's free, you're going to go in there more frequently because you don't need to worry about the cost. But when you plug up that bandwidth, then you have to start dealing with all the other things that come with it. So now you have a serious surgery that has to take place, and you go in, and they can't accommodate you immediately because all the operating tables are being taken care of. Then you have to wait, and you could die or whatever. So this takes place all the time with anybody that has national health care. So don't let them fool you. Okay? The only way that you can have free health care is you can't. Okay? The only way you have free health care, essentially, I guess, is if your employer pays for it. So get a good job. Go to school, do whatever you got to do, and get a good job so that you can be taken care of. So, I did mention a little bit about, I do want to make one mention on abortion real quick, because that came up again in the news. But before I do that, let's talk about some holistic healing. If you are struggling with the autoimmune disease, you have flares, you experience inflammation frequently, then you may need to change your diet. There's a company called Autoimmune Health and Nutrition, formerly known as Primal Health and Nutrition. They started when a sister educated a brother, and a brother helped a sister. Their line of 100% compliant paleo, keto, specific carbohydrate, and autoimmune protocol diet proteins are number one on the market. They are the cleanest available options out there. So if you are there are a bunch of different components when you are eating foods that can cause inflammation in your body. So for example, one of their products is a cherry chocolate. Usually chocolate comes from cocoa, but when you have something like an autoimmune disease, you can't consume cocoa, otherwise it will cause inflammation in your body. So they use a cocoa replacement called carob. but it's still delicious. So go to Primal right now. It's still primalhn.com and use promo code DYPP at checkout to get 20% off your entire order. They're still transitioning from primal health and nutrition to autoimmune health and nutrition as they wanted to focus more fully on the autoimmune side of things. So if you're trying the conventional way and it's just not working, give autoimmune health and nutrition a try, and they will help you along the path of holistic healing. So go to primalhn.com and use promo code DYPP at checkout. Again, DYPP at checkout at primalhn.com to get 20% off your entire order. So the last bit that I wanted to cover is abortion. Now, Mr. Ralph Northam, who was, fighting for his life politically recently and no longer has to fight, because if you are bad at your job or whatever the case may be, you never have to leave in politics, which happens all the time. So he suggested that when an infant is born in a botched abortion, basically they were unsuccessful in aborting the baby, and the baby comes out, then they could keep that baby comfortable until they determine the fate of that baby, right? So there was a bill that was passed that said that in the Senate that said that you cannot, or I guess it was anyway in Congress, that you cannot kill a baby after a botched abortion, that you have to there still has to be care for that baby after a botched abortion takes place. So it's just like it's any other baby, right? So if especially right now, where for some reason crazies are convinced that it's okay to kill a baby after, it's literally a fully formed baby, and it goes through the birth canal, and before it goes to that birth canal, it's magically made a baby, according to some of these leftists. Okay? So now you can essentially kill a baby in the womb that is 9 months fully formed in, I believe, just New York. And it's being presented in Virginia, sorry. So this is right now the current argument, and it's complete garbage, and it's disgusting and everything else. Because what's the difference between that baby when it goes to the birth canal and in the stomach? Nothing. People say, well, it's still relying on you. Are you kidding me? All right, a baby in the stomach, while it's developing, is a lot less work until the baby comes out. Right? Once the baby comes out and you actually have to care for it, it's much more difficult. It is 100% more difficult. I know. Okay? I have many siblings, I have children, and it is nothing compared. Granted, your wife is uncomfortable. Yes, your wife can be uncomfortable during the pregnancy. They experience a lot of different emotions, they experience all the different things. But the fact of the matter is, the baby is a lot more difficult to care for once it comes out. Right? You actually have to care for it, you have to parent it, you have to do everything. So for them to believe that all the different arguments for abortion are just complete garbage anyway, because, especially at this point, because the baby is fully formed. And once that baby has left the body, now it's a baby. Not when it was 9 months fully pregnant, ready to bear, right? So that's what has been suggested. Anyway, but Ralph Northam and other Democrats, they didn't, well, I guess not Ralph Northam, but those in Congress, they didn't vote for this bill. There are only a few Democrats that actually voted for this bill to prevent people from killing a baby after it had been born, which is infanticide, obviously. Obviously, it's infanticide. So just because you didn't want the baby to begin with, and you decided that 5 seconds before it's born, and it comes out and it isn't aborted and it's fine, it's fully functioning, baby, you can't kill that baby. That's essentially what was proposed, and it should have been unanimous support. Someone said, "Oh, well, there's already something similar to that." Who cares? Who bloody cares? Okay, when you aren't going to support the death of the prevention of death of babies, then you are a monster. Either you're a monster or you're literally listening to that devil on your shoulder. To convince yourself that I would vote for that over and over and over and over again. What if that were your child? You fool. So there has to be some psychological evaluation of the majority of the members of Congress, because they are a bunch of psychos. If they are going to if they're not going to vote for something that would save a baby's life, even if they believe it's already been taken care of, who cares? Who cares? Pass 100 bills that say you cannot do this. Give us even more to work with if anyone decides to try to do that. It's just disgusting. Abortion is disgusting. Okay, I do not care who you are or what you're doing. When you cannot control yourself to the point of preventing a pregnancy, if you can't control yourself, that's on you. That's not on your baby. And has nothing to do with your health. In some occasions, very, very rare occasions, can an abortion perhaps be okay. But that's in the event where the woman would die. Okay, everyone experiences psychological issues after they have a baby. Okay, so you can't use that argument either. A baby is a sacred thing. And we have taken that sanctity and thrown it out the window because it's inconvenient. Because I'm not ready for a baby. Well, if you're not ready for a baby, then stop having sex. Idiots. I cannot believe how idiotic the entire world has become because they are more interested in convenience than they are with responsibility. Grow up. Start living your life. Anyway, that's the rest. That's the entirety of my show. Okay? Go out, tell everyone, get everyone on board. Let's ditch our political parties and start thinking logically. Subscribe. Thanks, guys.